Time travel, tragedy, heartbreak. Flashpoint details an altered DC universe in which only Barry Allen seems to be aware of significant differences between the regular timeline and the altered one. Cyborg is the world's quintessential hero. Thomas Wayne is Batman. Wonder Woman and Aquaman are fighting each other. What's going on? How did this happen? Well, don't worry, friends. On this video, we're going to answer those questions as well as discuss every adaptation of the Flashpoint story, a topic that will certainly make you ask, how far would you go to bring back someone you love? Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Barry Allen wakes up to discover everything and everyone around him has changed. He is not the Flash, nor does he have powers. His mother Nora, deceased in his own timeline, is alive. His father Henry died of a heart attack 3 years ago, alive and in prison in his own timeline. Captain Cold is Central City's greatest hero. The Justice League was never established, and even Superman is seemingly non-existent. Over in Gotham City, Batman is throwing criminals off buildings.
Probably already dead.
Then so are you.
So as we can see, this is a much different Batman. Cyborg appears and shows a hologram of the rest of the world's heroes in an attempt to persuade Batman to joining the resistance against Wonder Woman and Aquaman. They explain that their war has devastated most of Western Europe and that America is next on the list. Unfortunately, this argument falls on deaf ears, and Batman tells Cyborg to get lost. Barry frantically makes his way to Wayne Manor, where he expects to find Bruce Wayne, but instead finds a disheveled and abandoned Wayne Manor. Barry makes his way to the Batcave, where he's greeted by a very angry and very vicious Batman. But this isn't the Batman Barry knows. This isn't Bruce Wayne.
I watched him die.
My God, he's the one who died that night in the alley. Bruce died, and you lived. You're his father.
Batman is revealed to be Thomas Wayne in this timeline. His son Bruce was the one who was killed by the robber instead of Martha and himself. In this timeline, Thomas killed the robber who murdered Bruce, and the grief drove Martha insane, which led her to become the Joker. Alright, so Barry continues to try and convince Thomas of his identity as the Flash, but he just continues to get pummeled, and I mean savagely beaten. It's almost hard to watch. They toned it down a little bit more in the animated film, but it's extremely clear that this isn't a Batman you want to mess with. I mean, he threw someone off a roof, for crying out loud. As Barry struggles, his memories start realigning with this current timeline. But Batman still thinks he's lying, so Barry decides to eject his Flash suit from his ring. But the suit that shoots out of the ring isn't Barry's. It's the suit of Barry's arch nemesis, the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom, Eobard Vaughn. And that was the proof that Barry needed to know that Reverse Flash was behind everything. And after much discussion between Batman and Barry, they come to the conclusion that the only way to stop Reverse Flash and fix all of this is for Barry to regain his powers and become the Flash once again. But in order to do that, he's going to need to recreate the accident that made him the Flash in the first place. Barry puts the finishing touches on his plan. He gathers the assorted chemicals and straps himself to a chair with a lightning rod, to which Batman asks, "Are you sure about this?" And Barry tells him he has to. Batman flips the switch and they wait for the lightning to strike. Well, Barry got his wish. Lightning struck, but instead of re-granting him his powers, he was burned beyond recognition. Batman wraps him up and takes him back to the cave to tend to his wounds. But Barry tells them they have to try again, because if they fail, it's the end of the world. Suddenly, Barry has another shift in memories. Abin Sur is the Green Lantern, not Hal Jordan. He can remember his mother cooking for him, and Barry tells Batman they're running out of time, and that they need to try again, because if his memories combine, he will forget about everyone from his timeline, even Bruce. Batman takes Barry back up to the roof and tells him, "You really are crazy." Barry gets strapped back in, and lightning strikes again, so much so that the blast knocks Batman off the roof, and he starts plummeting to his demise. Suddenly, Barry's eyes begin to change, his body vibrating, and as Batman is about to hit the ground, Barry swoops in for the save. His powers are back. He is the Flash once again. Thomas and Barry go back to the cave, and Thomas is noticing that Barry's skin is healing on its own. He tells him his super speed affects his cells and it allows his body to heal at an unnatural rate. But he explains he's not quite at full power yet, and it could be some time before he can kickstart himself. After a seemingly endless amount of time and research, Barry realizes that Thawne would have had to take out the Justice League. But there was no mention of the Justice League anywhere, not even a mention of Superman. Thomas explains that there was a rocket that touched down in Metropolis years ago, but no one took credit for it. Barry asks if he knows where it is now, to which Batman responds with, Thomas and Barry go see Cyborg, and Batman tells him that he will join in the fight to prevent the war between Wonder Woman and Aquaman in exchange for some information. After some digging, Cyborg finds out that the rocket was taken to an underground facility labeled Project Superman. There's a report that something was inside the rocket, and it's being dubbed Subject 1. Cyborg takes Batman and Flash to the facility. Batman takes out a few guards, and Cyborg opens the massive doors, revealing a very frail and weakened Superman. Flash runs inside the cell and tells Superman that everything will be okay. They are his friends, and no one will hurt him anymore. They all escape the facility, and Superman has his first glimpse of the sun, to which he can only mutter the word, beautiful. Just as Superman begins to float for the first time, the guards come rushing out to attack. Superman uses his heat vision to incapacitate the guards and is overwhelmed with terror at what he'd done and flies away. The guards continue their assault, and Element Woman comes to the rescue. Barry's memories once again start changing, and he begins to go into shock. Thomas injects him with a sedative and tells him, fight it, Ellen. Don't forget my son. Batman and Cyborg take Flash to the home of the Secret Seven, and Batman tells them to help Flash slow down his memory process. Billy Batson places his hand on Barry's head and sees a vision, a world where there are more heroes, a world of hope. The news then states that the war has officially begun and has taken its first casualty, pilot Hal Jordan. Barry tells Thomas they need to hurry, but Thomas says Barry needs to change history first. Barry explains how he could forget everything at any moment and that they need to go now. Cyborg and the other heroes walk over, and Barry tells Cyborg to gather the rest of the heroes. It's time. Cyborg explains that the other heroes won't join without Batman's help, and that they're on their own. They all started walking out when Barry turns to Thomas and says, Bruce would have come. Thomas stops the group and says, tell everyone to be there. The heroes make their way to the battlefield where Aquaman and Wonder Woman are fighting one-on-one, though the only other hero to meet them was Enchantress, who reveals herself to be a traitor and separates Captain Thunder back into the Secret Seven. Just then, an Amazon warrior stabs Billy Batson through the chest before he could say Shazam. A lightning bolt cracks through the battlefield, and Barry falls to the ground and suddenly hears, oh, Barry, look what you did. Barry looks up to see his arch-nemesis, Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. Barry demands answers from him, but as Thawne begins beating Barry down and explains that he had nothing to do with it, that today, you are the villain of this story. You are a bigger villain to yourself than I could ever be. Thawne explains that Barry forgot what he did, so he sets Barry's internal vibrations to make him remember and gives him a direct punch to the back of his head. Suddenly, Barry remembers it. It was his mother's first birthday after he found out who killed her. Overcome with grief, he went back to the past, a place he swore he'd never go, the day of his mother's death. He tried to stop him, to stop Thawne, but instead he changed time itself. It is because of him things are changed. He traded the life of his mother for the fate of the world. Thawne begins beating Barry back down, and an explosion knocks them both away. Thomas comes in and explains, you can finish this, just get Thawne out of the way. Thawne comes back in, attacking Thomas, stating that Barry already removed him from the equation. He stopped him from killing his mother. He's nothing to him anymore. Thawne says how he never killed Barry because he needed him to become the Flash, but now that the timelines have changed, Thawne is a living paradox, which means he can now finally kill Barry. Just as Thawne is about to finish Barry off, a sword pierces him from the back through his chest. Thomas stands on the other side of the sword, telling him, never turn your back. Cyborg approaches them and says they need to get back to the rest of the war. Enchantress has already taken out all of the Shazam kids and turns her attention to Thomas. firing an energy blast, knocking him down. Enchantress is about to attack again when there is a distinct sound in the sky. Barry looks up and says he knew it. A shadow comes over Enchantress and Superman flies down full force, stomping right through her, killing her, exclaiming, "No more!" Superman flies over to Wonder Woman and Aquaman, carrying them both away. Explosions are being seen everywhere. Thomas pulls himself up and tells Barry he can fix this. Run away, fix all of this. Take this note, give it to Bruce. Thomas falls back to the ground and before he closes his eyes says to Barry, "I'm sorry about your mother." Barry gets up and starts running. He gets faster and faster and is then thrown from the Speed Force and back to his home. His mother is asking what's going on. He tells her how all of this is happening because of him. Barry explains how he went back in time to save her, but the world changed too much, and a lot of people have died. Nora asks how many, and Barry explains that it's millions. But he can't bring himself to let her die. Nora embraces Barry, her son, whispering in his ear, "You need to let me go." And with a final hug, she tells him she will be with his father. She'll be okay. Barry gets back to the Speed Force and sees his past self on the cosmic treadmill, running to stop his mother's murder. Present Barry shouts at the past Barry and explains he can't do what he's about to do and pulls him off the treadmill before he could change anything. Just then, Barry wakes up at his desk at work, fearing the exact same thing had happened. He runs to the Batcave to see if it's really Bruce. Barry explains to Bruce what had happened, how he had changed the whole world on the brink of destruction just to prevent his mother's death. Bruce tells Barry not to beat himself up. "If I had your powers, I'd have done the same thing." And as Barry is about to leave, he says to Bruce, "The person who helped me save everything?" He then hands Bruce a letter from Thomas. Bruce pulls his mask back, and with tears running down his face, looks to Barry and says, "You're one hell of a messenger." So that's the Flashpoint story. However, it's been adapted a few times, such as Season 3 of the Flash TV show, as well as an animated feature. The Flashpoint in the TV series is much different, and in my opinion, took way too many liberties surrounding the story. It left out Cyborg, Thomas Wayne Batman, and the Wonder Woman Aquaman war. It mainly focused around Barry and him living the life he's always wanted, while another speedster was the hero of the city, not Captain Cold, as it was in the comic. Vaughn plays a similar role, but is more of an "I told you so" than in the actual threat that he was in the comic. I wouldn't consider the Flash TV show an awesome adaptation of the Flashpoint event, but that's a discussion for another day. The Flashpoint animated feature is probably the best adaptation. While it definitely tones down the violence, especially when it comes to the war, the overall story is the same, and you can actually watch Thomas Wayne throwing someone off the roof. It's also able to keep the same emotional level that the comic sets, which, let's be honest, is difficult with an animated film. So that's everything you need to know about the Flashpoint paradox. That's going to do it for this edition of Cap Comics Now. If you like this video and want to see more content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What's your favorite part of the Flashpoint story? Let's start a conversation. Alright everybody, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time on Cap Comics Now. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.